Last week we discussed some of the kulos that we have by ksamim, and the video got cut off all the way at the end, so therefore I'm just going to go over the last kula that we have by ksamim, which is the kula of tluyos. Tluyos is that we can assume that the dam came from a different source. If we have some other source that we can point to and say that the dam could have come from that other source, then we are allowed to be taila, assume that the dam came from the other source as opposed to the lady. And that's going to be a shiloh that you have to ask the Rav if you have a good flu or not. Some of the more common ones are if, let's say, Naisha has a bloody nose, or if there's some other wounds or bruises on her body that are bleeding. That's something that can very easily become a tluya. Or if she's, let's say, working with bloody food, chicken, liver, things like that, that's also going to fall into the parsha of tluyas. So that is the last kula that we have by ksamim, and now we'll move on to the halachas of Harchokos. And just as a little hakdama, there's a lot of different halachas when it comes to Harchokos. It's not something that we're going to be able to finish within a 4 or 5 minute video, and may have to take a few weeks. But we have to be careful with Harchokos for a number of reasons. First of all, we have to know that Harchokos is the Issa D'Rabbanan. It's an Issa D'Rabbanan, it's not an Issa D'Oraisa. We know that Tashmish is an Issa D'Oraisa with a Nida. Chibuk v'nishik is actually a Machlekes HaPoskim, whether that's a D'Oraisa D'Rabbanan. Those things are obviously, everyone understands that those things are going to be Asr. When it comes to Harchokos, everybody agrees that Harchokos are D'Rabbanan. So that can unfortunately create a feeling of laxity when it comes to keeping the halachas of Harchokos, because after all, it's only D'Rabbanan anyway. However, there's been a number of stories that have come out, unfortunately, with couples who are not careful with the Harchokos, and that led to chibuk v'nishik, hugging and kissing, or that led to actual tashmish. And obviously these are things that we have to we have to be very careful. And the Chachamim knew what they were doing. Some of the Harchokos to you may seem like it's silly, and come on, and nothing's going to ever end up happening if I don't keep that Harchokah. But the Chachamim, really, we have to really trust the Chachamim, have a little bit of Mus Chachamim, and that they know what they're doing when they're saying that these things are Asr. Fine. So there's one of the things that also always comes up when it comes to Harchokos is there's sometimes we have an halacha where kavod abriyos will tell us that we can relax certain halachas. So kavod abriyos is, for example, if someone's going to be embarrassed in public, everyone's going to figure out what's going on, that she's in nida. So when it comes to other halachas, there are some times where the Chachamim said, since this is a situation of kavod abriyos, someone's going to be embarrassed, so then we do not have to keep certain halachas. So the question is, does that apply when it comes to the halachas of Harchokos? And Ramosha says in the tshuva that it does not apply. It does not apply at all. So even if you're going to be in public, it's going to be embarrassing, and people are going to figure out, and you think it's so embarrassing that no one's going to be able to figure it out, and therefore you think that you can be mekel with certain Harchokos. It's not true. There's no Harchokah that you can be mekel for when it comes to even if you're going to be embarrassed. So something that we see that the severity, the seriousness in which the Chachamim were masakin these halachas of Harchokos, and it's something that we have to constantly go over. I think if there's one thing that we have to constantly chazer, it's the halachas of Harchokos, because there's so many different details and so many different halachas. It's something that we can very easily forget some of the details. And if there's one thing that we should really go over, it's the halachas of Harchokos. So moving on to the first category of Harchokos is the Indian of schayk v'kalas roish. Schayk v'kalas roish, loosely translated, is joking around, too much lightheadedness. That can obviously lead to the wrong places. So the Chachamim said you can't have too much schayk and kalas roish. Now here is where each couple has to figure out what schayk v'kalas roish for them is. For one couple it can be one thing, and for another couple it can be another thing. You have to know yourself, and you have to know that certain types of joking around is not okay, and certain type of lightheadedness is not okay. However, the Chachamim also told us that compliments are completely okay. You're allowed to compliment each other during that period of time when you're usher, and not only that, but it actually is encouraged, because it's a time when there's a certain distance, and people can start feeling like they don't appreciate each other, and there's some different feeling in the house or whatever it is. So therefore, you have to Adrabah, you have to continue to give compliments and be thankful for everything that each person is doing, and we have to be careful with just making sure that it doesn't get out of hand. So that is when it comes to compliments, and also you're allowed to give presents. And in fact, again, it's encouraged. If you can buy your wife flowers, there's no problem. Write her a nice note. There's 100% mutter, and again, it's encouraged because this is a time where you can start feeling distance, and it's a good idea to give compliments. So for the first category, schayk and kalas roish, every couple has to know what different jokes should not be saying, or different lightheaded moments they should not be having. But generally, compliments and presents is going to be mutter.